is 6:02 p.m. We will call to order the regular meeting of the Lancaster Select Board. Reminder, this meeting is being recorded and broadcast thanks to our friends at Sterling-Lancaster Community Television. I'll start the meeting with a roll call. Ms. Turner?
Here.
Mr. Allison?
Here.
And Mr. Kerrigan is here. Okay. First item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes of January 22nd and 29th.
I'll offer a motion to approve the minutes of January 22nd, 2024 and January 29th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. Minutes are approved. We're going to take things slightly out of order since we are ahead of schedule miraculously. We have a scheduled hearing at 6:05. We are going to take up some appointments and acknowledge some resignations. In our resignation section, we're going to acknowledge that Eugene Brazo resigned from the Commission of Disability, Denise Hurley from Tax Fairness Committee, and Matthew Mayo from the Zoning Board of Appeals. We thank all of them for their service to the town on these committees and commissions and boards and many others. So we thank them for that. And then we have two appointments to consider. One is for the Commission on Disability, James George Peters, for a term to expire on June the 30th, 2026. Is there a motion to appoint James George Peters?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Just my standard is that when somebody first, I don't know if he's been on before. I think that's a wonderful commission, and it would be great to have somebody interested, but it would be great to say hi. And
We will have him
Talk
on
to him.
a meeting in the near future, for sure. Okay, no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Ms. Turner?
aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. Next, Council on Aging, Kendra Dickinson for a term that expires June 30th, 2026 with an asterisk. I'm not sure what the asterisk is, but.
Because it was an add-on.
Oh, it's an add-on to the
agenda.
agenda. Yes, thank you. This is to deal with a recent, no it isn't, okay, great. Oh, it is to deal with a recent vacancy. But all right, is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Um,
She is here.
I know. I am very,
If you'd like to, she has shown up.
I'm very pleased. Thank you, Kendra, because that's one of the things I love. Our policies and procedures say it's nice to ask people if they have any questions and to try to welcome you. So with that, I know you're very familiar with all aspects of town government. Thank you for offering to join. Do you have anything you wanted to say or ask?
I mean, we're in the middle of a vote. Technically. You guys made
I
the
thought you
motion.
said end of discussion, so.
In discussion, but not her discussing. She's not on the board. She can make a comment afterward. Presumably this goes, right? But I think
Okay, so
I like
I guess-
your odds.
So, Mr. Chairman, in the
yes.
future, especially when we have somebody here who knows here, we just mentioned it, and it is our policies and procedures, it would be really nice to allow the latitude of having them actually followed and speak to her.
Well, agreed. I would point out, and just for point of being factual, you made the motion.
I did, because I
So I
thought,
just want to point out.
because I thought that we could do this.
Move the question.
Yeah. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. Congratulations. Do you have anything you'd like to say to us?
No, I just think it's a great honor, sadly, however, to fill Jay's seat. He did great work, and I hope that I can honor him by doing a fraction of said work. And as I said in my letter, with my mom being now an aging senior with disability and health issues in town, it's another perspective that I now have working with the team to get care for her, and they have been instrumental in that. So I'm excited to help out and pay it back as best I can.
We appreciate that. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. All right. We are now at 6:07, 2 minutes past our petition for pole and wire locations hearing. So we need a motion to enter into that hearing. Do we have someone from, before we do?
We do. We have
So
signed
Javier,
there.
there we are. Javier's back,
Javier.
okay.
All right, so I need to read in the
Yes, you do.
petition?
Yep.
Okay. Under the provisions of Chapter 166, Section 22 of the General Laws, and any additions thereto or amendments thereof, a public hearing is scheduled for Monday, February 5th, 2024, at 6:05 in the Nashua Meeting Room, located on the second floor of the Prescott Building, 701 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass., and Zoom, address as noted. To consider a petition submitted by Mass Electric Company, DBA National Grid, request to locate a pole, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the public way, 7 Bridge Road. National Grid to install one SO pole.
Recording in progress.
This is the good stuff.
Yeah, okay. Two ones, all right, we don't have to start that again, right? To install one SO pole on 7 Bridge Road, beginning at approximately 600 feet northwest of the center line of the intersection of Creamery Road and continuing approximately 600 feet in a northwest direction. Installing one SO pole number 3, approximately 600 feet from the intersection of Creamery Road.
3-1.
3-1.
Perfect. Is there a second for opening the hearing?
Second.
Okay. I don't believe we have to vote on that. We are now in a public hearing. Mr. Morales, would you like to be heard on behalf of National Grid?
Yeah, hi, my name's Javier Morales. I'm here representing National Grid. And as you described, I'm here to seek approval for grant the location for new pole number 3-1, which would lie on the corner of the property at 38 7 Bridge Road. The reason for this new pole is to provide service to a brand new home being built at that location.
Okay, seems reasonable. I drive by that home all the time since I live on that road. But
Mr. Chair,
yes,
I apologize. Did we vote to enter the public hearing? I'm not sure if that's required or not.
I don't think
Steve determined that it wasn't?
I didn't think it was necessary, but aye.
Aye.
There we go.
Aye.
Perfect.
Sorry for the interruption. So,
Yeah, so worthy pole placement, necessary pole placement, it's, I know, Roy's checking it. This is some of the beautiful work that we have to do here on the select board, Roy. These are important things. Does anyone have any question for Mr. Morales? I do not.
Mr. Morales, I drove by, looked, I didn't notice, but I could have missed. Is there any major tree cutting or trimming that's required here?
It's just very light trimming that's on private property. I was able to place the pole directly between 2 very large trees to avoid any substantial trimming. So any trimming is negligible, just a couple of small little branches.
Thank you for taking that into consideration. And I know you always consult with public safety to make sure that it's a good location, so thank you.
Okay. Mr. Allison, do you have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the pole placement as printed in the agenda?
Does anybody, did you want to ask if anybody else has any?
I didn't.
Oh, did,
I mean,
I'm
I
sorry.
asked if anybody had any questions.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
I'll ask again. Does anyone here have any questions about the pole placement?
No.
Okay, great.
Usually we do.
Yeah, that's why I asked and they didn't
Yes,
respond.
thank
So anyway, is there a motion to,
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. Congratulations, Mr. Morales. You have your poll.
Oh, that's great, thank you.
Have a good-
Appreciate everybody's time.
Have
Have
a
a
good
nice night.
You too.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
right. Now, we elected the poll hearing, and we are going to take one item out of order because Mr. Allison may have to jump on and off for a second. And so we want to make sure he is here for. We have an action, the select board's acknowledgement of an open meeting law complaint filed by Russ Williston on January 23rd, 2024. You all are made aware of this. This is the reason he alleges that the purpose of our executive session on January 22nd did not meet the requirements. So we are acknowledging receipt of his open meeting law complaint. Any questions? Comments, concerns?
I read the complaint. I'm not going to judge one or the other. It's not my position to do so, but we've had other complaints.
Many.
Many other complaints from Russ and others and different people. Why do we acknowledge, is this a new
We always,
process where we acknowledge them?
we're required to acknowledge it. We always
Okay.
require, we always
Okay.
acknowledge the receipt of it, yeah.
Okay.
And so the board should take a position. I know you just said it's not yours to opine, but it actually
Yeah,
is.
It is our job.
You need to take a position.
I firmly believe, as I did when we approved the agenda to go into executive session and did so, that it was within our rights to consider those items in executive session. Russ contends is not. Our response, if the board approves, is to say that we reaffirm our position that it was the right position to take and that the executive session on January 22nd was all proper. And in keeping
I
with
move
the...
to reaffirm the board's position that we did the right thing and support the select board and chair in this process.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. At that time, I questioned whether, because there was no formal litigation, if we were able to do so. Certainly, if there's litigation filed, we can do so. So I would like to,
Keep in mind, council is, yeah,
Keep in mind what you discussed at that session. So it's in pending litigation, and that is literally what you discussed.
Yes.
It's based on a demand letter that the board sent.
yes. So,
You've seen it.
I have seen that, but I
Yeah.
thought this was, I don't want to breach
Right.
executive session. So, at any rate, what I was going to ask for is to, if it's, I don't know if the time frame allows this, if we could table this, I could talk to the AGs.
we are required to get back to them with a certain number of days, I think by the 8th, yes?
And I don't know why you would want to do that.
Just to make sure that,
Well, we have lawyers.
all right, I'm going to.
We have lawyers,
Okay, I'm gonna-
rather than talking
all right,
to the
I'm gonna
Attorney General's
abstain on
office,
this
we
one
have
because
lawyers.
I don't know.
You're gonna abstain. So you.
Because I don't have
But
enough-
before we went into executive session, you said you had concerns. Then we had executive session. Not to
concerns
divulge what we
remain.
had talked about in executive session, but you had no concerns after you heard the information in executive session. So now you're saying you have concerns again.
No, I have concerns about us being able to enter into
But-
executive session, not the content of the executive session.
But I literally answered that.
In executive session.
executive
We
session.
answered your concerns at that meeting about whether or
I
not
know you
that
said
meant,
that we could. I do remember
yes,
that.
And I gave you the reasons why.
Okay,
and demonstrated why.
And you had a document.
okay.
Aren't you guys happy to hear us talk about stuff we can't talk about?
I know this is so awkward.
It's just, we're relitigating something we've already discussed.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to vote for it. You
I
don't have to
understand that. No, it's
vote
going
to
to pass.
reaffirm
I
our
know-
position,
I know it's
but,
going to pass, so that's fine.
all right.
Then I will.
So do you not agree with the position that the board took then and takes now?
I'm obviously missing something, that's why I do it, or not remembering something as well as I should have. I trust that you did that, okay, so.
Maybe you'd like to read that.
We don't, I mean, you're welcome to read it, but
It'll be a public document.
once she reads it,
It's,
once we sign it.
yeah.
Well, it's in the,
It'll be
on
sent.
the
Once we sign.
table, it is
Once we sign.
public,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm just saying it might help you feel more.
Refresh my memory?
But we're in the middle of a vote on that. So you
Well, I
should read
can't
it.
speed read, so. So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to read this and take a few minutes here, or do you want to just hold that vote for a few minutes and, as I'm reading?
Yeah, I mean,
Your pleasure, sir.
my pleasure is that we,
Oh, did I read this?
they've done this several times now, so my pleasure would be that you remembered what we talked about before, but
Well,
it's fine
I'm not
if
sure
you
we-
didn't.
It's not that my recollection is different, but this is how I would hope. Spur. Okay, so the way I do remember you saying this, thank you, and thanks for offering this. The way I read it is litigation hasn't been formally filed, so due to my, albeit older, I am going to vote against it.
That's fine. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. All opposed? Ms. Turner?
Aye.
No.
Nay. Okay,
Thank you. Okay, sorry for the wait. Next on our agenda, we have boards, committees, and departments. Tax Fairness Committee update. I would invite the chair of the Tax Fairness Committee, Roy Rizek, to take the podium and introduce himself and offer his presentation.
Sure. Let me just bring it up.
I'm Roy Rizek, 125 Harvard Road. I have the privilege to serve as the chair of the Tax Fairness Committee. Yes.
Sorry, stop moving the mouse for a second.
oh,
Because I can't share. Sorry.
Doing some remote
You can
control.
have it, but you can't use it.
Well, you can in just one moment.
talk with your hands.
Now you're just asking for too much. Yeah.
It was just
There we go.
being persnickety. Okay, mouse away.
Mouse away, okay. All right. As I was saying, I'm Roy Rizek, 125 Harvard Road. I have the privilege to serve as the chair of the Tax Fairness Committee. We have several members of the Tax Fairness Committee sitting here in the front row. Sheila Casey, Heidi Leclerc, Susan Munyon. They will answer all questions.
Smart man.
Okay, so this is the 3-month progress report we are required to deliver to the select board. In fact, it is our first 3-month progress report. And, you know, I'll be looking for some feedback on this as we go along. So let me see if I can make this work now. Okay, yes. So the introduction outline, we're going to talk about the quick mission statement review, background, and in this day and age, no presentation would be complete without late-breaking news. Okay, and we have some. We will talk about research, our findings, our next steps, or conclusions. Sometimes we have findings, but we have to say we can't form a conclusion at this point in time. All we can say is more data we need or what our next steps are. In some cases, we can say this is our conclusion. All right. We have a near-term proposal here. We will talk about what our process was that led us to this set of conclusions, and then we'll have a summary slide. All right, we'll take questions as we go along or as appropriate, okay, particularly at the end. Okay, this is a direct copy of the Article 16 from the May 23rd ATM. I won't read it to all of you, almost all of you were there, okay? We would just say that we'd summarize it by saying there were 2 aspects. One is real estate tax fairness in general, here in Lancaster, and the second was a senior means tested exemption. We will call that SME in the rest of this presentation because otherwise my voice will crack before we get to the end. And we'll tell you what that is in a few minutes with some other aspects of tax policy particularly, all right? So that's the mission statement. That's just directly from the Warren article. Okay, whoops. Can I go back one? How do I go back? Thank you. Yes, okay, fine, thank you. All right, just to give you history, our first committee meeting was October 25th of last year. We adopted as the SME problem statement. What's the problem we are trying to solve by doing an SME program here in Lancaster? Is that we want to help keep seniors from moving out of the town due to tax increases. As some of you may remember, I think everyone in this room remembers, we had just gone through a Proposition 2.5 override. All right, this was fresh in our minds. In addition to that, due to the SME implementation timeline, this is a home rule initiative, and in general it's stated that it takes 2+ years. As Alex talked about at the last select board meeting, it's very easy to have that 2+ year process become a 3+ year process. And we were trying to avoid that if we at all could. So there was some urgency due to recent and projected tax increases with the new high school coming online. The SME implementation requires multiple affirmative town and legislative votes. It's complex. And we had an upcoming ATM meeting on May 24th, and our question was, could we be ready for that? So we prioritized the SME investigation over tax fairness. We set tax fairness on the side for this 3-month period. And we looked at this and tried to ask the question, could we develop a well-thought-through and supported SME proposal for the 5/24 ATM meeting? We need the support from not only the select board to sponsor this as a warrant article, but also we need the support from the town, because this has to be voted on, and we've got to have a majority approval of this. And I just comment, doing the SME proposal right and well was always a top priority, but we also wanted to balance this urgency to avoid getting into a 3-year process if we could. Now, late breaking news. As we were getting ready for our presentation here, okay, the new governor, proposed on January 19th, she's proposing a statewide framework for town SME programs. You might ask, what does that new framework look like? We all have the same question because it hasn't been published and produced. It's in the legislative process at this point in time. So we have looked at the reality of that and said, we really can't do anything substantive until we see what her proposal is. So the whole SME work we have put on pause at this point in time. I'll tell you what we have done, though, in terms of near-term proposals and what our next steps are in a few minutes. Any questions on this?
Yeah, so the sole reason for putting the SME work on is a proposal from the governor.
A proposal for the governor to make it easier to propose those.
Right.
Okay, yes.
You know, I'm not going to opine on the legislative process or the governor's proposal, but if you think the 2+ year process that we would have to go through is long, going from a January 19th speech to legislative language to passing the legislature to then getting to us is going to be much longer than if we did our own process. So I would just caution that waiting for that to work its way through, and then any potential court challenges or whatever might have you at the state level, waiting for that to then come to us, and then we would undoubtedly still have a 1 to 2 year process once we got it, I would think puts us on the 4 or 5 year time frame before we got an SME here in Lancaster.
Okay.
That would just be my guess, unless, and I love my friends on Beacon Hill, but unless they've learned to move at breakneck speed. And keep in mind their legislative calendar ends July 1 this year, so they're not doing the full year because it's an election year, so.
Right, the thought that we took when we got to this point was, there was some thought that the governor might be able to get her programs through, because she proposed several other things.
Yeah.
Might be able to get her programs through by the end of the legislative session. That's kind of what we were thinking when we made this decision. If that doesn't turn out to be the case, we can put it on our list to revisit it at that point, and we can have some discussion in terms of what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt that she'll be able to get something through. It's just then it goes to the departments that have to manage it. They have to create regulations. Those regulations have to go out through the system, and then that takes a while before it gets to us. It would just be, if that was the only reason why you guys were putting pause, I would just caution, I don't think it's gonna save you time in the long run. I think it might end up costing us time. But that, again, you guys know this better than I do. That's why you're here. But I just wanted to ask that before we moved on.
All right, okay, we hear your input.
Yep.
We put it on pause now. I think we'll revisit it come July or so, and we'd be willing to have a discussion and get your, judgment on what we should do there.
Yeah, and I'll check with our legislators too to see if they feel like it's moving
Sure.
or not. Yep.
Okay. All right. So that is the late breaking news there. Now what I'd like to do in the next slide, and this slide will be it will take a little bit of time. It will compare and indicate how several pieces of tax policy fit together. One is the Massachusetts Circuit Breaker, which is a very important tax law for seniors here in Massachusetts. The second is specifically the SME, the Senior Means Tested local initiative that we could do. And the third one is the tax deferral program. I'm going to put those all together on one slide and show you how they interact, because some of these do interact. And decisions in one space by a town may impact what the state does in another space. And just summarize that for you, all right? So, the Massachusetts Department of Revenue claims that right after money was invented, they were there with the Massachusetts tax forms, okay? And they allowed people to, and they required people to start filing their taxes. So here is what typically would be a Massachusetts adjusted gross income filed on Form 1 that many of us fill out every year. Now, some seniors who may be listening tonight will say, wait a minute, Roy, I'm tuning out right now because I don't file a Massachusetts Form 1. I don't file any taxes. My income is so low I don't have to. So I'm going to tune out. My response to them would say, wait a minute. Because this will be beneficial to you even if today you don't file any Massachusetts tax. And if your income is so low that you don't have to, that's okay. But I'm going to show you some things where it will be beneficial for you to go forward. So let's talk a little bit now about this circuit breaker topic I've talked about. What does the name circuit breaker come from? It's not a big black toggle switch in the legislative hill, and some people have thought something like that. It was coined 20 years ago because what it does is it breaks the problem of high real estate taxes for senior citizens, and that's why they called it the circuit breaker. So what is the circuit breaker? It is a Massachusetts law. Whose goal is to reduce your taxes or your rent plus 1/2 of your water and sewer, okay, to be less than 10% of your total adjusted income. Now, what is total income? Total income is your Massachusetts AGI plus Social Security gets added back in, plus any retirement set of income that was previously excluded, plus any public assistance. All these kinds of things get added back in and increases your total income. Now, dealing with that old point we all understood, the golden rule, she who has the gold makes the rules. Since the state has the gold here and they're going to be paying, they make the rules about how this gets applied. And their rules typically deal with, first of all, you have to report your real estate taxes that you paid. You have to report half of your real estate taxes or rent, because this applies to both owners and renters. This is an important distinction. Keep that in mind. And 1/2 of your water and sewer bill, all right? And then, your assessed value, and any income you receive from the SME process, which is done by a town. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll show how these two interact. All right? And fundamentally then what you get down to is this will become a keywords Massachusetts refundable income tax credit for those people who are over 65. Keywords here, it's a Massachusetts refundable income tax credit. The way to think about that is even if you don't owe taxes, you can get more, you can get money back. And the people here and those seniors who were kind of ready to tune out, I'm sorry. Hello. Where is our mouse? Well, on the lower left there.
Got it down over there. There you go.
Now it's up at the top.
Flying around there, Roy.
There you go.
Okay, there it is. I'm sorry. Okay. Those seniors who were not filing any tax here and did not have any income, they can get, even though they didn't pay any income, they can get money back.
Right.
All right?
Free lunch.
Yes. The Tax Fairness Committee has called this a free lunch. And if the state of Massachusetts is giving out free lunch, we want every senior in Massachusetts, in Lancaster, to go get some free lunch, because this is really good. Okay, so that's what the circuit breaker is. Any questions on that before we move on? And we're going to talk now about how real estate taxes and senior means tested exemption fit in here. All right, so let's talk about, you live here in Lancaster. We all have to pay taxes on our home, and this year on the average home, you're paying $8,534. All right? We told you that the circuit breaker talks about 10% of your total income. Here's that line on here. That would be, in this case, I just made an assumption this person makes $50,000. This would be $5,000. Now, how does this money, in effect, interact? When you file both your Massachusetts taxes and the Schedule CB, which is a set of schedules that go with your Massachusetts taxes, you mail those into the state. The state looks at that, and if you qualify, they will send you a check for the amount you qualify for. And what happens then is you can use that check to, in effect, pay off, or not have to, have to pay, just use that check to pay off part of your income taxes. In this case, I've assumed that for this year you got the maximum of $2,590 as the return. It's a function of the eligibility criteria, which the state sets. We won't go into details on that, but you could easily get this much. And now you're down to, well, you can see in the picture, you don't quite make 10%. But you saved $2,590 this year. That's pretty good. Well, where does senior means tested exemption come into this whole process? Here's where senior means tested exemption comes in. Senior means tested exemption is a town-funded initiative, and it has town funding constraints. And eligibility criteria, again, it is only for those people over 65. It is owners only. Renters can't get this benefit. And it takes not only the CB application, and some towns who have already implemented an SME program require that you have received circuit breaker funds also. And it is typically tighter criteria than circuit breaker in terms of income. And the circuit breaker does not require you to disclose any assets. The SME program does require you to disclose assets. They want to know, do you own any other homes? What are your total retirement funds? All these kinds of things. They ask for the assets, and you need to provide that to be considered. If you provide all of that and you get accepted, they could pay you up to $944 and wipe out the rest of your taxes here down to the 10% level. That's pretty good. You've saved a total of, if I can do the math here, $3,000, thank you. Yeah, $3,500. That's pretty good. All right. Let me make a quick comment here. What some towns have done is looking at this, they said, oh, you know what? Why don't we give our seniors more money and bring them down into this area? Let's give them another $1,000 or so, okay? And if they do that, here's what happens. Under some conditions, the amount of money the town gives them puts them into the situation where now the state, when they get the form next year, because this is on basically an every other year kind of process going back, you have to report the taxes you paid last year on the this year's forms, etc. The state looks at that and says, oh, wait a minute, our goal was only to get you down to 10% of your income in taxes. You got below that, so we're going to take some of our money back. We're not going to give you as much next year. We're going to give you $1,000 less in this case. And some towns have gone to the point where they gave their seniors so much money that the state says, oh, you've now gone over a threshold. We're not going to give you any circuit breaker money. So this 10% threshold becomes important because it comes to the point where the town is either into diminishing returns, or we're putting out more money, but the senior taxpayer is not getting the money, or is getting only a small portion of it. Or in some cases, some towns have given them money and found out that they lost all of the circuit breaker for income, and the senior person was even getting less. And that's the case where the town could put out more money, and the senior taxpayer gets less money. This is a lose-lose situation. We need to avoid that. And many of the smart towns are basically formulating their SMEs around this line, and our draft that we were working on formulated our threshold at that line too. Any questions at this point?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, I mentioned one other thing, and that was, whoops, tax deferral. And I think everyone will be happy to hear we're not going to talk about that tonight. Okay? So, any last questions on this slide before we move on?
No.
Okay. All right.
Huh? Do you have any questions?
Do you have it?
I don't have.
No, I don't, no, I
I don't have
don't.
any questions.
I was joking.
Okay.
It was for Steve.
All right, what we're going to do now is talk about a lot of the research that we did. We will talk about our findings, which is the raw data that we found. Sometimes we will have a conclusion. We state, that's the data we found. We've reached a conclusion based on this. We're moving forward, okay? We'll take input and other suggestions, but we're moving forward based on this. We think it's a firm conclusion. Other cases, you will see us say, we need more data. We need to ask these questions, these kinds of things. This is just a summary of the point about doing SME right, well thought through and supported has always been our top priority. Now let's talk about what are the benefits for seniors remaining in their homes. We're talking about we want to do that, but let's ask the question just so we're real clear. What are the benefits to seniors? What are the benefits of them remaining in their homes? We have learned by our research that it is beneficial for seniors to remain in their homes as long as is practical. We'll come back to this phrase and some comments on the next slide or two. It's beneficial to the seniors to stay in their home, and it's beneficial for social, emotional, relational, physical, and financial benefits. There's documentation about those kinds of things, making those comments. It's beneficial to the community that lives nearby and knows them, all right? And it's beneficial to the town and taxpayers in terms of avoiding increased educational expenses. So these are the benefits we feel, and this is what we've concluded here. This was our finding. It was beneficial, and these are the reasons we're moving forward in that space. Any questions on that? Okay. The next question, because we were trying to deal with keeping seniors from move, the question was, why did they move now in the first case? What's causing them to move? So we did some interviews and we did some research online, and this is what we determined in general. This does not cover every reason why a senior might move, and it is not, we can't give you specific percentages in each category. No one we could find could do that. But here's some of the reasons why seniors generally move from their home. First reason is increased care needs. This is the dominant reason we found. Seniors need more help with the tasks of daily living, and they need people to help them. Second issue typically is mobility issues. Most older homes, the bedrooms are all on the second floor. Maybe the master bathroom was up there too. There's a set of stairs to get down to the kitchen. And in general, people need those two sets of rooms every day. As people get older, getting up and down those stairs becomes harder and harder. Some people move to be closer to family, both for care needs and for connection. Okay, as we get older, you know, my wife has made it very clear she wants to be very close to the children and the grandchildren. Okay, and I understand that. 4 is cost of care in their home has just gotten to be prohibitive for the few hours they need a day or that kind of thing. 5th is, yes, there is costs around the house. There are issues of operations, utilities, repairs, yes, and taxes and increased taxes and these kinds of things, etc. But typically, that's not the major one close to the top. It's typically around their care needs. I may cover a couple of other things and then we'll take any questions. We also learned that 70% of seniors will require long-term care. and some will move in with family as a way of getting that. This means that my plan to remain until I'm at least 120 in my home here in Lancaster, probably need to rethink that, okay? It's just something we need to recognize, and these factors here, the whole thing about increased care needs and mobility and these sets of issues, these drive the phrase that we termed "as long as is practical" for that set of seniors to remain in their home. We want to help them stay there as long as it makes sense for them. We realize at some point it probably doesn't. Last point is we just wanted to recognize that yes, we do understand that there are what we call people with a move plan. These are people who have always planned that they would downsize when the kids were out of the house, that they would move when the kids were out of school to avoid the higher education taxes. And yes, people do complain about the higher education taxes here in Lancaster once their kids are out of school. It becomes the benefit of our education system is attractive to move in, but when you don't have kids, it becomes a barrier, it becomes an issue. And some people move to a warmer climate, all right? Almost all the graphics I've seen in terms of people moving out of the Lancaster-Clinton area, they're all going south, all right? We recognize that for those people, and typically they move 65-ish at the latest, maybe a little after that, but they're pretty much gone by 65. There's pretty much nothing that Lancaster can do to keep those folks in their home.
In your opinion.
Beg your pardon?
In your opinion.
In our opinion, yes, in our opinion.
It's a very global term, but yes, in your opinion, yeah.
Okay.
Humble.
Yeah.
All right, so what we found is that care needs necessitates the move out. That's the fundamental finding from our research. Are there any questions or comments on this slide?
No, I mean, I don't refute the research. I would just say, in discussing this before we put it on the town meeting warrant, the reason why we wanted to tackle this is we recognize, or at least I recognize, that of all the things on there, there's not much that I can do as a member of the select board to impact their increased care needs or where their kids live or
Right.
their lack of interest in cold. But there is one thing that we can tackle, which is their property taxes.
Right.
And so I don't deny all those other things, but if there is something we can do for those like my folks and others who weren't ever going to move, they had moved themselves to a first floor living in their own home. They were not moving for climate because their grandkids live nearby, and they were gonna stay there. They had the means to stay there, but for me, that's the person I'm looking out for. Because to be quite honest, moving costs money too. Picking up and
yes.
relocating your entire life costs a lot of money to a senior who doesn't have enough just to pay the taxes. So
Right.
I was viewing this as, of all those things that we can impact, the one thing we can on this board and its town's officials is the tax one.
Right, and that's why we stated the problem the way we did, okay? It's around the increased taxes to see if we can keep that from being the factor that moves them earlier, okay? Yes?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Sorry, I just have a question. Is this, how did you come about this? You said my research, but like,
Our research, okay?
right, yeah. So what was the research that led to this? Was it conversations with?
It was three main pieces, Kate. One is, we went and talked to Kelly and Caitlin Roy and asked them who work with the seniors here in Lancaster and said, why is it that people move? And they told us pretty much the first three answers.
Okay.
Number one.
Yep.
Number two, we had a meeting with, we did a presentation to Council on Aging. And we asked them the same question. And they gave us a list like this. There were a few more on the bottom, okay? But it was very much the same list.
Okay.
Third point is I went online and checked some, queried this and got back basically pretty much the top four are pretty much what came back online. And it lined up really well with what we were finding here in Lancaster. So at that point we said, we have triangulated. We've got three independent points that say basically the same thing. So that's why we felt comfortable that this was a conclusion.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
All right? All right, moving on.
I do, I have lots, but I
Sorry.
figured I would let everyone, some of them come right off what you were saying too.
I mean, while we're here, you might as
Well-
well ask them if you got them.
Go ahead.
Okay, so going back to Steve's earlier question about the SME, he's certainly been around the State House a lot, and in my time here, going through things like even civil service, I know how painful that and tedious that can be. And I understand why the committee would be hesitant to take on an SME, because you don't want to spend lots of man-hours and political capital only to have something that comes out that's a tweak that renders your work useless. Okay, so I appreciate that and I understand that. I also agree with Steve. See that, Steve? We agree.
Someone write that down. We're recording it, right? Okay, good.
I also agree with Steve that, that one of the things that we can control and should offer, if practical, is an SME. One of the things, but how we get there and what, because I don't want you to have, tilted windmills. I don't
I'm
want you
sorry.
to tilt at windmills, be doing a lot of things. So from what I've seen is you're looking at, for example, the circuit breaker, which I'm a huge fan of and advocate for very strongly with a lot of people. Not enough people take advantage of it. More and more do. And that's something that you literally have the bully pulpit there. I am glad that you drove home how important that was. And not to be deferred too long is the tax deferral
Yes.
and the other programs that could be had. Because there is no silver bullet, but sometimes a combination. As far where I disagree a little bit, and I think Steve probably would agree in the end, is that we can have influence, and we do by our commitment to health and human services and other things, that we can, and I sit on the board of a nonprofit in Neshoba Neighbors, and we try to address what's called the unmet needs, because most of the studies that I've seen and show that despite the yearning for palm trees, many people go on vacation but still want to stay in their home and age in place, similar to your parents, Steve. Snowbirds are accepted in Lancaster, right? You can split the baby. So I think that and that's not under your charge or mission, but it's certainly under that of the Council on Aging and even
Sure,
just even our table here as we sit to find out where our budget priorities want to be. But I think it's important, I'm glad that you focused on what was realistic and practical. And I understand your concern with the announcement, the late-breaking news. But I'm not as, I guess we're probably a little more road-worn, having been here for a little while. I know it's like a great idea, it's gonna happen like this. I share some concern that it won't happen as quickly as that we all would like it to happen. But I also don't want you to waste time, so the jury's out. I think our commitment here at this table, maybe through a different method too, and just making sure, talking to Kelly and Caitlin and others about addressing the top reasons
Sure.
people
and-
have to leave.
Okay, to go back to the SME proposal, I would recommend, and we feel like we should wait through the end of June to see what comes out. So in the summer, we should revisit this and see where things stand. And then we can decide how to proceed.
So I will tell you, if there's not something in a committee in the next 2 weeks, you just don't need to wait till June. Because it's not gonna,
Okay,
if
you
there's
do
not a
that.
proposal that's before the legislature, they're gonna start their budget stuff. The House will do budget, I think, first, then the Senate, and then go back and forth. So I would say, and I just texted our legislative delegation to ask them what their insights were. And I'll let you know after I hear back, but my guess is if it's not assigned to, I don't know that, I love the proposal, and I loved it when she said it, but taking a proposal and putting it in writing to the legislature to get a sponsor to then file it, to then take it to a committee, that's a long process in and of itself. And I would guess if there's not something before a committee in the next couple of weeks, then it's not gonna get.
So what what
Just
kind of
for
time?
perspective, it's taken 3 years to get to the first reading of the decaf
Of the decaf.
legislation.
Oh, yeah, right, and
Which I thought would
And that was a
have been
simple,
quite easy.
the state wanted to give us the land.
so I guess the question here then is, what would you propose as a reasonable time that we should have a joint discussion?
I would not pause the SME work that you were doing.
Beg your pardon?
I would not pause the SME work you're doing. If you're pausing because you think the state's gonna come in with something overriding, it would be, I think, a legislative miracle if they got something done before the elections, and then you get a whole new legislature, they've gotta file it all over again, it's gotta go to a committee again, and then you're off to the races again, and that's a year and a half from now.
So
Okay.
could my question,
But you just asked my opinion,
That's right.
what I would do.
but my question, so excuse me for a second, Roy. My concern or question is that we said we were gonna open the warrant in February and close it in late March or April and
Yeah.
earlier things. So even if there was agreement and will to do something.
I'm not saying it'll
in
necessarily be ready
advance.
for this annual town meeting.
Right, I would tell you that where the committee was, before this happened, we had looked at, because we knew the warrant was going to open soon and would close the April 1st, I believe is that the right date?
I don't think we set the date yet, do we?
We did, we talked about it.
But it
We talked
will
about it one
open
time.
next week.
Next week.
Yes, okay, all right. And we spent time looking at a couple of aspects. We looked at the question of, do we have enough data that we know what we want to propose as an SME program? Our conclusion was we did not have enough data, number one. Number two, we looked at, do we have enough time? Could we do the things we would need to get that data and reach a conclusion
Yeah.
before the cutoff date for the warrant article? Again, we said, no, we can't get it done in that time frame. Okay? We looked at a third question, which says, do we know enough to say we don't want to, we recommend not doing an SME in Lancaster for the next couple of years. And we also said, no, we don't have enough data to reach that conclusion either. So therefore, we said, we cannot, at this point, we don't have enough data, we're not convinced to say yes, we're not convinced to say no. The question was, and we were, we were ready to state that to you here tonight, is what we had planned to do before all this happened. And the question was, what could we do in the interim that would address some of these needs? And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes.
Sure.
So is that helpful? I mean,
It's helpful, I was just answering your question of what,
Yes, okay.
of what you, I just don't, I think if the reasoning is to wait to see what the state does, you'll be waiting a very long time, would be my guess.
I think also our impression was based on information from Debbie, who's, you know, in
Yes,
the
right.
finance, was that she's on our committee and my understanding from what she said was that it was part of a budget proposal and that it would go much more quickly than that, and she thought it was almost certain to get approved. I know nothing about this.
Right.
Just to be super clear, but that is part of the information that we were working with, and for us to pursue trying to figure something out and at the same time have somebody else say,
Yeah.
no, it has to be like this, and then, but once it is in there, it does go a lot faster
If they take up the governor's
If-
budget,
if they take up the governor's
which they
budget.
never do. So the governor's budget's always, it's been, and I'm a big fan of our governor, it's a press release, basically. And it's what she wants to fight for, which gives the legislature a sort of a framework, but the House and Senate Ways and Means Committees develop their own budgets, and that's what it's based on. Those ideas can be in there, but just because it's written into her proposal, they take it as friendly guidance from her as what she'd like to see, and then they put it over there. They might refer to it later, but it's the same thing. When the president releases a budget, it's a press release.
What, really?
I know, yeah. And then the Congress doesn't act on it. But that's a whole other story.
So,
Anyway, but yeah.
But that was part of
No,
our
that-
decision.
that
Our decision
totally
was the
makes sense.
information we had from her
Yep.
was that
Yeah.
this kind of thing.
Typically, when you get close, like if you're in like June, the budget is the document that you want to put something in, because the budgets will pass eventually. So so it is true that they call it a Christmas tree, bill, because you want to hang as many things on that thing as possible, because then if the budget passes, all those bills pass. So that concept's right, so I totally get why that's the logic. It's just because it's in her draft doesn't necessarily mean it'll be the final. But it's something to fight for, it's something to make sure that we tell our legislators we want them to prioritize and push.
okay, I guess what I'm struggling with as the chair of the committee is kind of how to put this into an action item so we can do something with it to move it forward, okay? I'm not sure right now if I would say we'll put it on a subsequent agenda and we'll come back and take a look at it. Should we do something near term with it? Should we wait at some point? What should we do? I guess we'll just have to put it on as an action item on one of our agendas to discuss what we
Well,
think
I think
makes
what you're-
sense and maybe get some more input.
Yeah, I think what you heard from Steve and I was that we'll have a clearer definition in a couple of weeks. And if we believe, as Steve suggested, that this is going to be a longer process, then, double down and get going on an SME as well. You admitted that you have still ways to go on that.
Oh, yes.
And I think there's acknowledgement, at least on my part, maybe on yours, that it won't be ready for this.
Okay.
Also, let's be very clear. Good ideas come from Lancaster. So don't dismiss the concept that the work that you might do to develop an SME here in Lancaster can't help inform what Representative Kilcoyne or Senator Cronin
Yes.
could argue for before the legislature as a good idea for how towns of our size might tackle such an issue.
Okay, the last comment that I will make on this topic is, one of the other reasons why we decided not to move forward is, part of the governor's goal was to make it easier for towns to do this. And therefore, to go back to your point, we didn't see, wasting a bunch of time for something that might say, oh yeah, you don't need to worry about that. We fixed all that, we've changed all the frameworks, we don't need your framework, So that's part of the.
Well, so you said, well, we'll take it back up in July after we see it, and I think we're just suggesting that you may be taking it back up earlier than that if the tea leaves land that way. We could be wrong,
All right,
I was
so,
wrong once before.
I thought I was wrong once, but.
But either way, we need
Even
more
I was.
information
When
before we
if
felt
you
like we
do
could
take
make any
it-
decisions.
Take it back up, one of the things that you might want to explore is a really good idea that's gonna come from Lancaster, which is that it isn't a tax. And so that is something that I've been working with our reps at the DOR for, is the proposal that we've been kicking around, at least Steve and I, it will be the first of its kind in the Commonwealth. And there's
We
no
would
there's no
look
there's no
forward to
rule.
reading about it and hearing about it.
Me too.
Well, okay.
Okay, could we just kind of hold on that to get through the rest of this presentation, and then we'll come back to that topic, all right?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so finances are a key part of the issue we're trying to solve. And another question we went to do some research on was, what are the finances of seniors? How do the finances of seniors compare to others? And one of the things we stumbled into in I think it was a 98-page, I'm sorry, I'm clicking the wrong mouse. 98-page, very well-written assessment of senior means tested exemption by Lexington was a great town survey that they did. And let me explain what you're looking at here, because it's kind of hard to read this. This is a survey they did in Lexington in 2019, in which they asked the question, how stressed are you around meeting your housing financial needs? And what they found was that the green sections, parts of each bar here, are those folks who are not stressed. They're in great shape.
So can I ask before we go on?
Sure.
So this is Lexington in what year, 2019?
2019, right.
So do you have the data that compares our economic demographics from Lancaster to Lexington's?
We have some data a little bit, well, we have demographic data in terms of population size. We don't have financial data, because that's very hard to come by.
No, I would just suggest, it'd be like comparing a hill town out in the Berkshires to Wellesley. There are a lot of folks in Wellesley who aren't necessarily concerned about their finances, but the hill town in the Berkshires may be. So I would just suggest Lexington in 2019 may not be Lancaster in 2024.
Right, and we're not saying it's exactly the same, but we think there are some interesting trends here that we should
For
look at.
Lexington, I would just suggest.
Well,
it's a comparison.
I think it's in, why don't you,
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
let
continue.
me finish this, and then we'll come back. I think there's
Sure.
2 slides on this set of topics, okay? Basically, what this says is the green band is basically people who are not stressed, okay, or in very good shape relative to paying their housing costs, be it rent, be it taxes, be it heat, all these things. The yellow band are those people who have medium amount of stress, And the red band are those people who are in significant financial stress every month to make their housing needs. Down the left-hand side is typically age groups by 10 years. And it builds up from, I think the bottom is 20 to 29, et cetera. The top three are seniors at 60, I think it's 60 to 80 plus. But the key message here is that if you look at this, it's very clear that it's very similar in terms of what percentage of an age group has significant housing stress. And the point that we found was that high housing financial stress is about the same at 20% across all the age groups. That's what comes from this information. When we looked at some other data, which is some data I found online, is that seniors as a group are not more financially stressed regarding housing costs. Maybe there are other costs, medical costs and other sets of things, but regarding housing costs than other age groups. And the question that some of the questions that we got.
Where did you get that? That seniors aren't just off that Lexington?
No, this came from, I believe it was a Federal Reserve paper, and there was, one of the things I will say, Steve, is it was very difficult to find significant and really good data in this area. Okay, there was some information I found in a IRS reference report, no, a Federal Reserve reference report, that basically said this, and it also said that there's some other age groups, namely, there were two age groups that started to get called out. One is the sandwich generation. Those people are supporting their children in school and their senior parents, that they may be more financially stressed than seniors in general. And we're talking about in general. You can always find specific data points, but I'm talking about in general trends. And the other one was millennials and some other folks there. There's some issues there that I can't even begin to explain to you.
Student loans.
Student loans, yeah.
Yep, student loans.
Student loans, okay, all right. So we came across this data.
Just if you could get us that reference point. I want folks who are watching this like to know where the data.
Make a note on that.
Just where the data comes from.
Yeah, all right. So this is a finding, a piece of information we found. We have not reached a conclusion totally on this. We've got some questions, as you can see here. How many Lancasters would really benefit from an SME? How many are in severe stress? How to gather that data? We're thinking about doing a Lancaster survey. We want to talk to Lexington. They did some really good work. And obtain information from these other towns who have done SME programs. Questions or other comments?
So I did a quick look, and both in 21, the average median household income in Lexington in 2021 was $202,852, and in Lancaster was $111,000.
Yes.
So if I'm making $202,000 as a family, I'm going to be less stressed about my staying in my home than if I make $111,000.
Right.
Unless their housing is cost more.
Sure,
Unless
but
the
That's an
average house.
And let's
What's the
use
average
some other
house?
data here.
I guess my point is, I don't think we should look at 5-year-old data from a town.
No,
It's
but
much more clear
that's
that-
just a data point. We said we should do a
I
search.
understand that. I hear you.
Right, and I would prefer much more recent data and that kind of thing. It was tough to find anything else, Steve. So we share this as an interesting data point. We're trying to get more correlation and collaboration around this data point, okay?
Yep.
Now let's take a look at some of those other towns.
Listen, before you, I'm sorry.
Sure.
To Steve's point, yes, Lexington's a much wealthier town. Their tax bills are also much higher.
Higher, yes,
Their
absolutely. We're going to get to that in a
Their
minute.
assessments, you know. I like to think of what my house would be worth in Lexington.
We can give you an idea in a minute.
Yeah, all right. But I think that your questions that you bring up are very relevant and insert, and I think you alluded to it when you say talk to Lexington. I'm assuming that you're going to talk to all towns or other towns, because there aren't a ton of towns that have SME. I'll be asking
There
you
are
that.
8 currently and about 20 looking at it,
Okay.
we understand.
And so, and looking at the average demographics of those
Yes.
towns or something that I'd like to know. So those are relevant. If we want to survey the full age group, you know, maybe we can talk as a board about helping support the cost of a survey going out in tax bills or something. But ask people questions like that.
Okay, that's it.
Well, let's just see what the rest of your,
Yeah, let's, okay.
just to get a sense, how many more slides you got?
About 12.
12.
Yes, right. I will try and move.
Let's try to hit lightning round. That's what-
Okay, lightning round, okay.
So you got a date, I got a date.
So, you talked about, I'm sorry. Too much.
Is Jason in?
Mouse is here. So, the next question we looked at is, what can we learn from the other 8 towns that have implemented an SME program? And particularly, we started to ask questions about, and what we did was, we obtained and read all their documents. Okay, I'll correct that. We read many of their documents. We researched their SME parameters in terms of how they set this up for their town. And we tried to learn from what can we learn from characteristics of those towns. We didn't take income because we're looking at seniors, and seniors are not characterized so much by that net income number. Steve, we understand that, but that's why we excluded it. But we did take a look, first of all, and this is looking at the raw data. And here you can see these are the average assessed value of homes in the different towns. What you can see looking at this is that I believe it's Concord and Winchester are very expensive homes. They're at $1.3 million and change, quite a bit more expensive than we are. Some of the others are down lower, and Lancaster is off on the far right here at 456. 456, okay? And we looked at this and said, ooh, the raw data doesn't tell us much, and there's some other data down in the bottom that's very hard to figure out. So what we did was we said, okay, let's compare all this to Lancaster, and let's normalize the data, and see if we can learn from that and group it. So what we did is we took the information, we grouped it into what's the average assessed value of the home, what are the average taxes paid on that at home, and what's the population of seniors. We thought those were dominant financial and demographic pieces of data that would be helpful to us. And what we learned and what we observed was the following. Of the 8 towns with current SME programs, all 8 have average home assessed value of more than 150% of Lancaster. Some of them are up in the, 300%, okay, for Concord and Winchester. And you're right, Steve, we asked the question ourselves, are they a direct comparison to us? Okay. The second question was, what about the taxes? And you can see that, okay, again, Lancaster is the far right blue one in each one of the clusters. That's 100%, and all the others are scaled to that. You can see that all of those in general have taxes that are 150% of Lancaster's. Again, a much bigger financial hit, or much bigger financial cost that people in those towns have to pay for their homes. And the third item was, what's the population in these towns? Because we felt that in addition to financial stress based on taxes and things like that, the number of people over 65 that were in that situation would be relevant to what the towns decided to do. And you can see that most of these towns, 7 of the 8 have populations over 65 that are more than 150% of Lancaster's. I'm sorry, let me click ahead. Okay, only Harvard's is smaller, and some of them, boy, are almost 3.5 times larger. So that's quite a significant difference. So we didn't reach a conclusion on this. What we did is we formulated some questions to go ask some of these towns to get some more data about this, to see how we could extrapolate or learn from what they learned in those areas, see what makes sense for Lancaster. We're only interested in doing what makes sense for Lancaster. We're interested in learning from others. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. That was one of our founding principles early on. Any questions on this?
No.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Whoops. Could you back up one slide, please? Go one more. Okay, this I think just summarizes the last set of things. So let me go on to. So, having done that research, the question is, what do we propose to do? What we proposed to do here is we're going to strongly promote the Massachusetts Circuit Breaker tax credit. Why? Because it's got maximum eligibility. Both owners and renters are eligible. It is a maximum check of $25.90 this year for 2023. It is retroactive for 3 years, and you can get up to $6,110 back. We have a friend.
Caveat, only if they have not applied for it.
Yes, right.
Correct.
Okay, correct. If you can do that retroactive.
Yes, I understand.
Right, we have a friend who has done that and gotten a check for $6,110, so it is very doable. It's available now. There's no cost to Lancaster, but significant and rapid benefits to seniors. If you apply by April 14th to get the 2020 income, and we are working with the Council on Aging, the Lancaster Community Center, HHS to promote and help seniors apply and receive this benefit. Kelly Dolan and others, we are working together to get this promulgated and pushed out, okay?
In fact, the flashing sign is already
Oh,
your
good, yes.
taxes. So Kelly was awesome to get that up. I drove in and she's already got that up.
Great.
And the point is, you probably, with $25.90, that's probably more than what we would have gotten you for SME in
Right.
the first place.
Yes.
So,
But you could have gotten both.
Possibly, as long as you didn't hit the 10%.
yeah, that's a problem. That's the
Right.
tricky part about
Right.
making sure that we got this right.
Okay.
We
Now,
don't
a quick
cost
comment
the
on
town.
that here. I want to review some of the math around this, and particularly the math around Proposition 2.5 we went through last year, and the math around the circuit breaker stuff very quickly for what people can get.
Very, if you don't mind.
Okay, all right. So the bottom line here is that last year we were kind of all a little bit down because we had approved a Proposition 2.5 override. It was going to cost us $682 more in taxes.
On
And-
average.
On average, for the average home, yes. And in terms of 2024 net increase in spendable cash, that was a negative. Okay? If you apply for circuit breaker for 4 years, you can get this, and we know people who've done it.
Wait, sorry. $682?
Yeah, it was 135 was the prop override. The rest was just your taxes that go up.
Okay,
And just,
then,
only because that's a staggering amount. If
Yeah.
1.2 when,
yeah, this number I pulled was the difference between the 2023 taxes and the 2024 taxes on the average home.
but your taxes were gonna go up
Your taxes are going up
regardless of the
anyway.
Prop
With
2.5, so.
reevaluations, things like that.
Well, I understand, but that was the number that comes from the.
But I want to be very clear, that's not related to the it says to the category.
Okay, I will be willing to put a footnote in if you can help me with what the footnote should say.
Bless you.
Okay? All right. We talked about if you apply for 4 years, you get $5,428 back. This is massive for those people who have not filed. And if you did apply for the last 3 years, and I'll take your question,
Okay, that's
Alex, you would get $1,908, of which that's $708 more than you would have gotten last year. So people, seniors in Lancaster, even in the face of higher taxes, are better off if they file for the circuit breaker than they would have been in the prior year. You have more net spendable cash.
Right,
That's the conclusion. Okay?
right.
All right?
Couple things,
Alex.
just to be clear, sorry. I want people not to be confused, as we all agree, circuit breaker is a great thing. We encourage people to do it this year, now. There's nothing, no MSC talk, no any other kind of talk, it's just do it. And there are a lot of seniors that are already doing it.
Yes,
More
there
need to
are.
be. Number two, if you apply for the CB circuit breaker for 4 years, now you can only go back 3 years, but you're talking about the current year.
Well, because we're in
Retro?
a fold over, where we're in the wrap over period. You can go back for 3 years up until the point where the taxes had to be
April
filed.
14th.
So
Okay.
April 14th, you can go
Right.
back to 2020. That makes it 4 years.
Okay,
Okay?
That's fine.
All right. Now, just a couple quick comments here. Come on, where is? All right. So this applies to renters also, which is great. Every circuit breaker eligible Lancaster person can get this. There's the numbers. And I just want to make a quick comment. As always, people should consult a qualified tax person before making any tax plans or changes to any filing, okay? We're just giving them a layman's view of the information, but they should contact a qualified tax professional.
And just a little plug, because AARP is such a big supporter
Yes.
of the circuit breaker, that they have launched the free tax preparation services in many, many places. I know Clinton is full now.
No,
No,
No?
they're not?
No.
They have
181 slots.
I understand that. I thought they were
As
enrolled.
many as they need.
No.
Okay.
It's an infinite
So-
amount.
We,
And it's
Okay.
between the two towns. It's, they
I know,
are
I
physically in Clinton, but
I know we
they
partnered,
get,
yes,
they
'cause we had
get
people.
from Lancaster residents to.
I get that. So my understanding was they were, but should somebody want to go to another one, there's also Leominster, that's all I was gonna say.
okay,
And other ones, Leominster, Worcester, and Fitchburg.
right.
have them.
We're working very strong, well, go ahead, finish your point.
No, that was it. It's just that there's other resources, but the sooner you do it, because typically they do, I
As you
didn't
see-
realize they were
as
infinite.
you'll see in a couple minutes, we're gonna say, if you need help filling out your taxes, contact Kelly Dolan, who will make a referral for you. We're focusing everyone through
Okay,
there, and
excellent.
Kelly's doing a great job on that.
Excellent.
All right, I will move along. This is, can we go back one, I'm sorry. Thank you. So why are we making this proposal now? It's immediately implementable, broadly applicable, all right? And it provides net positive spendable cash to seniors, even after a Proposition 2.5 override. Footnote to follow. Okay? All right. We want to make, using this bully pulpit, a call to action here for all seniors. I'll keep this short, okay? We want, if you are a senior, ask yourself this question. Have you filed your Massachusetts income tax Schedule CB for the last 3 years? If you can say yes, great. If you're not sure, call your tax professional, your tax preparer, and ask them if they have. If not, ask them to do it. And if you don't have someone, talk to
Kelly.
Kelly, we did, the LCC, yes, Kelly, all right, and they'll make a referral. I also say that we are also saying to family and friends of seniors, because we know seniors are tough to contact. They don't always respond to email blasts and other things. Please contact them, call them. They will respond more to your phone call than they will respond to any other mechanism we can think of. All right, moving along. In terms of our committee process, I'll make this real fast, okay? The key things that enable us to get this far are the good people who are willing to work on the committee, the fact that we were willing to do, I'm sorry it went back. Whoops. What, do we know why that happened?
Number
No, but
19,
just-
it's okay.
But you still have 6 slides.
No, some
No.
of them are backup.
Okay,
Some of them are backup.
all right. 'cause
I'm down to the last 3, Steve.
Be scared, be very scared.
Okay. This was our process, some of the key points about our process. The key aspects were the good people on the committee, thank you very much for putting them on the committee, who are willing to work outside of meetings. We only got here because people were willing to work outside of meetings. And we did working groups that enabled us to get to this. We took a fact-based approach to the information and tried to get that. And we worked to understand Lancaster's problem before we would implement any solutions. So those are the key things there. I will also say we've received help from a whole lot of others, people who have helped. Kate specifically, and Kelly have been fundamental in terms of getting where we are and moving forward.
Fantastic.
So our next steps, we will work with COA, HHS, and LCC on this program and getting it implemented and getting the word out to people and getting them to get their circuit breaker form completed. We will then start work on the tax fairness. We will also look at the tax deferral investigation and then the SME analysis, and we'll come back and look at that in some period of time in terms of what makes sense in terms of doing that more. Last point is, in summary, we've told you we prioritized the SME analysis, we researched, we are proposing this near-term circuit breaker program because it provides more money to more seniors faster at no cost to Lancaster than any other approach we know. And we've defined our next steps. So with that, that's the end of our report. Any questions, comments?
I have a This discussion has been focused on those over 65.
Yes.
Okay. There's different varying definitions of seniors, but those over 60 and others too. But one of the things that I have found anecdotally and by some research is that sandwich group that you talked about, where families who move here for our excellent schools with young children and are facing the cost of a house that they didn't buy in 1940 or 50, but they bought it more recently, so they have a big burden. Is the committee, and this is a question I guess for us too, looking exclusively at seniors or looking at the broad tax fairness means testing?
Okay, and comment here. For the SME program, we're looking at exclusively those people over 65, because all of the tax laws in that space are all stated must be over 65. We can't see any way around that.
Okay.
In terms of tax fairness, it will be tax fairness for everyone in Lancaster with real estate taxes. That's the general comment in terms of what we're looking at there. All right, and beyond that, we deferred that. We'll be getting back into it.
Okay.
Alex, anything else?
No, thank you.
So you can't see any way around it. You just said everything you're looking at was 65 and over. You can't see anywhere around it.
For the SME program,
Right.
all of the state laws
Right.
are 65 or older.
Right.
Okay, right. We don't see a way that we could, for example, bring that down to 50.
So if we did an
Well, we could-
innovative program on our own, you think?
But we could, yeah, so we could create a program on our own and work with the legislature or the
If
state
you-
to get it approved.
If you wanted to do a different program defined from the ground up, you could, theoretically do that, propose it to the state legislature. If that gets approved, okay, fine. But the SME program is specifically for 65. It piggybacks off a circuit breaker, which
Right.
is very clearly 65. And even tax deferral is over 65.
So, all right, so I guess so I appreciate the benchmarking and looking at what other communities are doing, or the comparison to other communities from a demographic perspective. But first of all, thank you for all the work. Thank you for everybody who was willing to serve on the committee. I appreciate you, obviously did a lot of work. The circuit breaker, it makes a lot of, it's a program that exists. It's great to promote it. I think that's fantastic. So all that being said, I guess I don't, I was put on this board, not necessarily to worry about I'm not being flippant, but about the housing costs and everybody in 8 other towns. Even if we can find through an SME a way to alleviate a little bit of financial burden on the people who live in Lancaster, just because other towns don't necessarily do it or do it differently, is that enough reason for us not to look at it?
Well, okay, in comment, as we said, we want to learn from the other towns, but we want to do what's right and best for Lancaster. So we will take that as input, so we don't reinvent the wheel, but we will take and decide what's the right thing to do in Lancaster. And Lancaster is clearly different demographics and different financial characteristics. We would do something we think makes sense for those. Okay.
So right now, there's no proposal to come before the town meeting.
Correct.
It's just, not just because it's very important, but it's promote the circuit breaker program.
Right.
Okay.
And I think the general idea is that we would get more information based on how much interest and how many people actually use the circuit breaker. And we need more information, and we can't make a recommendation without more information for the SME.
It sounds like a survey is something that you want, and I believe would be good to inform this board and yours.
So, take me through that. You need more information before we can keep the SME project moving forward?
Before we can put it on, not to keep it moving forward, but to make a proposal that has the literal what we want to put in there, we need more information.
Yeah. Right.
So what's the circuit breaker then?
So we could decide to use circuit breaker as our criteria, but as he mentioned, you have to choose a lot of information to put on what we would want in that tax fairness, or in the SME proposal. So the problem is that you don't want to go below that 10% threshold and actually
Right.
cause the person. So you've got that to consider. You also have assets and additional money that people had that were, the house in Florida, and the Berkshires, whatever. So there's a lot of things that need to be also researched to understand what do we want to include and how many people would this affect? Like, do we have a certain criteria that are under, like, how many people in Lancaster would actually benefit from this?
So there's my question.
I'd like to know that.
Does it, I'd love to know it, but even if there's 10 people, isn't it worth doing?
Well, I have things like the tax write-off, work-off, and that's a program that already exists that somebody could
But
already
it doesn't work for
apply
everybody.
Right.
But no, it doesn't. There's no program that works necessarily across the board.
Right.
It doesn't work for
But there
everybody.
are other things that people could do.
But I guess so can't we treat it as a yes and? Yes, there's a work program, yes, there's a circuit breaker, yes, there's, but
Yeah,
also
sure,
and
yes.
there's an
Those
SME?
are all part of the
We're thinking
discussion.
that way, and if we got to the point where we had a good idea how many people a particular program would help,
So I guess that's a question, why do we need to know how many people it'll help?
because I think that would impact costs, and it would impact, in effect, what it takes to implement it. And we would bring forth a proposal and say, this program we think would do this benefit for approximately this number of people in town, okay?
So
This
what's
is
the
where
magic
committee-
number?
Yeah, what's the circuit breaker?
We don't have a threshold number at this point in time.
What if it's 1?
Yeah,
If it's one, we might, I think I'm not sure what the committee would decide. I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure what the committee would decide. We will give you a report and tell you what we decided, and you can decide what you want to do if it's only one.
I guess that's where I was getting at, like, where's the, if you're the one person, that matters a lot. And so, if it's one, is it 20, is it 50, is it 100?
Well, it's one
Hold on,
second.
just,
Sorry, hold on, I just wanted to acknowledge, Dick Trussell
Dick Trussell
is
yeah.
on the committee.
oh, and he has his hand up.
Okay.
Yes,
I
yes.
should stand up,
So
sorry.
I was gonna say, there's one or more people could benefit positively. I think we all are in agreement that we would like
I
to do
don't-
something.
well, I don't know that we
However-
are.
Well, but
And that's okay.
But here's the things that I would ask as sitting on this side, Dick Trussell's side or our side of the table too, is what are the details? And the other towns like Lexington, I think that you've looked at, and so on, there's a cost. If you're gonna reduce one person's taxes, you have to pay for it somehow. Whether you pay for it out of the budget or reserves or
Right.
another tax.
Right.
So planning that, I don't think any of us can answer
But
without knowing
before-
more of the details.
Before I turn over to Dick for his question, I would say that's not how we pay for it isn't the charge of the Tax Fairness Committee. It's developing the program. How we pay for it is our responsibility and the Finance Committee's responsibility. So it's developing the program that meets the needs of the people, that in your best interest, and I don't want to presuppose it, but I'm going to relieve you of the burden of the how do we pay for it idea. If you come up with a program and says, this is it, we may not be able to pay for it, and then that's a policy decision that we have to make with the town meeting. But I don't want you to be hamstrung by saying, we don't know what we can afford. It's a question of what these folks and their homes can afford. That's the primary focus that I have. So let's go to Dick. Dick Trussell, do you have a comment? Or question? Or poem?
He's
Song.
He's unmuted.
You're unmuted, Dick.
He may have
well, let us
gotten, he may
know.
have gotten sick of me talking.
Let us know. You got it?
Am I there now?
You
You
are.
are. Can you hear us?
Stop concentrating on the big picture and fully concentrate on the circuit breaker. You realize there are 12 people here and listening to this and some in the room. We need to get this to 1,800 people. It has nothing to do with the big picture yet. It has to do with circuit breaker right now to get benefits for the seniors. If they do not go back to 3 years right now, they will lose the ability to get any money from 2020. What I would like to see tonight, and perhaps the board could indicate that yes, they want circuit breaker as a first step, and two, how are they going to get that publicized to the public? Because we can discuss this all night, it does no good unless we tell all the people about it. How are we gonna do that?
Well,
That's my question.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Dick. I mean, let's be clear, this board doesn't have to do anything for the circuit breaker to exist. Neither does the Tax Fairness Committee have to do anything for the circuit breaker program to exist. We are talking about it in great length at this meeting. I'm hoping that all of the folks watching and that Sarah Arnold, who is on there, will write about it. And we will work hard. There's a digital sign up promoting it. We'll work hard to talk about it. I think it's a fantastic program. It always has been. It's great they've increased the dollar amount. I think what the conversation we're having is, yes, that's fantastic, and we're all on board to promote that. We were just having a conversation about the other aspects of what the committee.
Well, we're gonna put a piece in with the next tax, bill, something like that. How are we gonna get this out?
They get, you might want to call on Kelly if she's
Yeah,
still
right.
here.
Kelly's,
I'll jump in.
Thanks.
I think there's a few things here. I hear you, Mr. Trussell, 100%. But people, are aware of it. Anyone who's obviously been doing their taxes, whether they do them on H&R Block or if you're doing it with a professional, they tell you about the circuit breaker program. I did some data even after talking with the committee a week ago, and I was asking people if they knew about the circuit breaker. Are they aware of it? Are they utilizing it? And I was 12 out of 12. All of them knew about it and utilized it. Outside of that conversation, I think that the data tonight is phenomenal. I think you guys did a great job. You're really passionate about this, and I'm a big proponent of it, and I'm still gonna be, I respect your decisions. I think something to think about, though, is the people in 5 years and 10 years from now, because there's no magic number, as we were kind of talking about. And in my world, if you can help one person, you've done your job. So I think that it's worth going forward. I do understand where you're coming from, but my stance still will remain that not every shoe is going to fit every foot. You really need to go forward and see, if you can help somebody in a different way, because not everybody can do the tax program we currently have, the work-off program, and there's just a way we can help people. And I think it's important to really go down that avenue, because again, there might be whatever data you need, there might be a few people who can benefit now, but in 5 years, there could be 50% more. And I really think that's something to think about, because the world is ever changing and things are getting more expensive as we continue to
Well,
go.
I appreciate the growth, Kelly, and I understand what you're saying. However, there are 1,600 people, 65 or more, in this town right now. Even if they're all married together, let's be ridiculous. It's 800 homes. How are we going to get that information to 800 homes is what I'm getting at. It does no good to just keep it to 12 people. We've got to get it out there bigger.
Well, I would suggest that you've made a good step tonight because it's been aired on cable and you've talked about that. I'm sure if your committee came up with a PR or marketing plan that you needed assistance from Kelly or us, that we
right,
could
and
help.
our discussions with,
This is a law that's been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
And it has been used, it's underutilized, and one of my favorite things, because it was like giving away candy, was explaining it to people
right,
and finding them, quote,
Right.
free
We
money
have
or a
talked-
free
yeah.
lunch. It's sad to think that anybody wouldn't know, and you found some of those people.
right, we have found some of those people.
So that's good.
We've talked with Kelly, Kelly has talked about it, we suggested and Kelly's agreed. She's gonna bring Department of Revenue in to do the presentation they do on this. We're gonna try all kinds of things to get it out.
Yeah.
We think
So-
we will increase the understanding and the application rate for this program by doing all of that.
So real
Sounds
estate
good.
taxes are regressive, we all know that. And not just for people who are over the age of 65,
Right, right.
but particularly difficult for people who are on lower means. So for me, it's the full age range. Of course, seniors, because they are the most vulnerable and have the other medical expenses and so on too, but others. And it sounds like that we talked about in a couple of weeks, we'll have a better handle about what the state will be doing. And then run simultaneously, consider working. It sounds like Steve's got, and Kate have been working on something they may want to talk about too.
All right.
So-
Any questions for us?
Senior tax abatement is another wonderful thing to,
Yeah.
Okay.
Two.
Any questions you guys
that's-
have for us?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Right, that's, I would just say that's not on our list right now. If you want that added to our list, we need you to
It's
make
just
a
a good
statement
tool.
to it. Beg your pardon?
It's just a good tool.
I think it's a good tool for Kelly and others to know, to promote, to tell seniors in town they can avail themselves of, which I'm sure they do.
Okay.
Just as the work program, the volunteer, work program, whatever it's, the volunteer program, the abatement program is good.
All right, with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. I would, yes. That does deserve applause, Sue. Thanks, Susan. Thank you very much. I would say, I do think, continuing to move forward on SME would be great, but we'll get you information when we have it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. As luck would have it, although I don't think they would consider it that, the library trustees are not coming this evening. They were waiting for a feasibility study to be finalized on some of their renovations and repair work, and that is not done. When that is, they will come for the next meeting after that, which means we enter into public comment. Once, as always, public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks, sorry. The Supreme Judicial Court says that I can't tell you what to say or how to say it, but I can tell you whether or not you can say it and for how long. So folks have 2 minutes. As is our custom, I will halfway through raise my hand, tell you have 1 minute left. Those online, please raise your digital hands. Those in the room, please walk up to the podium and state your name and address, and you will get your 2 minutes.
Ralph Gifford, 861 George Hill Road.
Excuse me?
Thank you, Roy.
You don't have to stand right behind the
Start
podium.
that time.
And your committee for great work. I just wanted to take one moment and remind people of the Black History Month concert coming up at the College Church, February 17, 5:30. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
That is very good. Thank you very much. The 17th at what time again? 5:30?
5:30.
I will say I went last year and it was
The College Church, yeah?
fabulous.
337 Main Street.
And the price is right, as I recall, isn't it?
Free.
Yes, thank you.
Well, that was fantastic. Anybody online?
I see one.
I can't see it. It's hidden in the louvers of your wall.
Kara, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Oh,
For
yes.
me, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Your name and address.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, name and address though first, Kara.
Yes, Kara Stanford, 350 Bull Hill Road. PJ Keating is up for earth products removal permit renewal this year. I hope that the select board will take the September inspection report seriously and the flags that it raises as it renews this permit. Groundwater testing happened for the first time as a condition of the last permit because citizens advocated for it. And that was good because elevated levels of perchlorate, nitrates, manganese, and iron were found. Manganese and iron were twice the Mass DEP drinking water standard. While the perchlorate wasn't high enough to trip the drinking water standard, what does it mean to have elevated perchlorate in the groundwater when this chemical is toxic to human health, persists in the environment, and travels fast in water? For those who don't know, perchlorate is a byproduct of blasting. The inspection report flat out says that the quarry operation is affecting groundwater quality. PJ Keating, in the same report, is pushing back hard on the permit condition to add more monitoring wells and to deepen them. It hasn't done it. There's no current testing to see if the perchlorate has traveled from the vicinity of the quarry. What I can say is that PJ Keating's quarry sits on the same wetland system that feeds a public water supply on Woods Lane, a bunch of private wells, and a perennial stream flowing into Fort Pond. For human health and the health of the environment, we have to be on top of compliance and be strict about it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other hands up, public comment is closed. Thank you very much. All right, next items on the agenda. One thing, administration, budget, and policy is a reminder from the town clerk that March 5th is the presidential primary, and there are early voting hours that people can find through the webpage. Open seats for our May 13th, 2024 annual election. There are a number of them. One seat on the select board is up, 2 seats on the finance committee, 1 seat on the planning board, 2 seats on the board of health, 1 partial to fill the remainder of a term of a resigned member, 1 full, 1 DPW commissioner, 1 school committee member, 2 library trustees, and 1 housing authority member. Should be a rousing campaign. Very exciting time. People can pull papers from the town clerk starting on February 14th, and those papers are due back with, I think, 30-something signatures by March 31st to the town clerk. All right. That is fun. And we did our appointments and resignations. And now we have application for use of the town green or gazebo. The applicant is the Thayer Memorial Library. Is there a motion to accept that?
Yes, I would offer a motion to approve the Thayer Memorial Library's request to use the gazebo February 23rd, 2024 from 3:30 to 4:30.
Second. Any discussion?
Can I?
You can, well, not really, but sure.
Is there a reason why the town department needs to ask the town?
Well, the select board controls the town green, the library doesn't. So in order for them to use the town green, they gotta ask.
And I think
We don't need a
for,
permit. We wanna run out and use the gazebo, we can,
Interesting.
but we don't.
believe it or not, I know there's a rush at the gazebo, but there have been booking error times where people like, you
But I
can
think-
kick them out, like have wedding photos or something.
Oh, no, I mean, it wasn't, I just was
Just why a town.
curious why, because they seem to be the only town department, but I guess because all the others are under the auspices of the select board. Just a
You got there.
educational piece for me, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, congratulations there. Next select board meetings will be Monday, February 12th. That will be an all Zoom agenda because we wanted to free up this very space for our dear friends on the planning board. And it'll actually start, I think, before the planning board meeting starts, and then March 4th of
Steve,
2024. Yes,
I know,
Alex?
I did get an email about that, but I'm trying to move it because I didn't know we didn't have a meeting scheduled and didn't say anything, and so I had double booked. So I have a meeting on February 12th, so
Well,
I'll be
as
there a
we
little
perfectly
later.
demonstrated, we have 2 members here and we've survived, so.
I understand, it's just not our regular meeting now, because it
It's not
conflicts-
because of a holiday, which is my next note, that the town hall is closed on February 19th for the holiday.
We'll meet tonight, and
And
then
then we
2
would
weeks
be
from
2 weeks from now, which was a holiday, February 19th, so we're not doing it then.
Oh, we're not doing anything that week?
It's a holiday.
I know, usually we do them on Tuesdays or another day.
No.
Okay, so the point is,
Not be here.
planning,
She'll also not be here, no,
lucky you.
yeah.
So.
Once a year.
That's good. So the planning board uses that Zoom, so we, I'm sure, have some.
They're not required to, they're required to have their meeting here. But I'm
Okay.
sure they'll work on all that stuff.
license.
They have their own license. See,
Okay.
there we go, worked it out already. That's how good we
Excellent.
are.
And so the next one after that is the March 4th.
Still the March 4th, yep.
Okey dokey.
Any other questions?
On that, no?
Town offices are closed, there's no miscellaneous correspondence or memoranda.
So-
Did I miss any, did I forget anything on the agenda? That, I
So
don't
Kate,
think so.
I know
Do
you had.
So, just a second, are there any questions, any comments?
you,
We just
sir.
still have to keep some semblance of
decorum.
order, yeah. Do you have
so
anything you'd like to say before we
I-
adjourn?
I know that you had mentioned it, I guess Kara referred to it, but you had mentioned, we got the
Yes,
we got some other correspondence in, I thought might be on here, but can we just include it to another future agenda, the
you just say it out loud, what you're talking
It's
about.
the 3-4 meeting is what,
That's
we had
March.
already set this agenda, so it's coming on.
For the
brief-
correspondence, you mean?
Well, because I thought you wanted to discuss
You
it.
mean the report?
Yeah.
Why do you keep calling it correspondence?
Oh, because it was,
You can just say the report.
because we're in the communications, I'm trying to be proper with the decorum.
It's listed on the 3-4 meeting.
Thank you.
And there's 2 of them.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Great.
You're way ahead of me, thank you. The other thing is, maybe at the 3-4 meeting, or maybe at the 12th meeting, if we have, the chairman deems it viable, can we get an update on the land transfers from?
Oh, we have an update.
Well, glad you asked.
Bing.
Today.
Today, I was on the phone with my dear friend Kate Hodges while she had to pause briefly to accept.
Yes,
Gotta be a little more dramatic, right? To accept
the land transfer.
the land transfer.
So, at your meeting on the 12th, you will have an official vote to accept the transfer, and then the final piece of that is that it has to go to town meeting, and then town meeting needs to
Okay,
accept
so
the
these are
transfer.
all the everything that was owed to us.
Everything that was owed to us.
They gave
That's
us-
lovely.
Lock, stock,
stock,
and
and
barrel.
That's too much time together. Okay, any other comments, thoughts, reflections?
Can we read-
Theories about life?
Let's read a poem.
No. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.